Two things in the gaming news world I want to talk about this week. The first is actually a game, Samson. Now, I just finished working on the Before You Buy video for Game Ranks, where I put more of a concise opinion out. Here, I just wanted to yap about it a little bit more, because I also did a preview on this channel for the game about a month or so ago. I got to play like an hour of it, and ultimately I found it pretty interesting, but it felt like something was missing. Now, having played the whole game, yeah. This is a tough one to talk about because I feel very passionate about this style of game, and I also appreciate what this studio is doing, from their approach to smaller game, to price point, to everything. But unfortunately, the game itself, Samson, fell a little short for me. I still don't think it's like a hard no. I'd say if you're like me, if you're tolerant of a lot of flaws, and you're just really interested in games, and you're willing to play a kind of middle of the road one that at least has some interesting aspects to it, maybe it's for you. But I still think it's interesting to talk about because for me, I feel like I was bred in a lab. I was born to appreciate games like this. Just a single player, somewhat linear action adventure game where you're a guy in a cool jacket, you drive a car, and you punch dudes. I mean, come on. Not to mention the fact that the game world kind of is like GTA 4 inspired in a lot of ways, but it is not a GTA-like game. It is way more of a old school driver game. I don't mean a driver game, I mean like Driver, the series, the franchise, which is now long dead, it seems, but that's part of the reason why I was interested in Samson, is because it was doing all this stuff, right? It's $25, it's only on Steam, and the people behind it is Christopher Sundberg specifically, who is one of the founders of Avalanche, of course, the studio behind Just Cause and Mad Max, which is one of my favorite games. I've replayed that game quite a bit. I love it, right? So for him to start a new studio, Liquid Swords, when they announced it a couple of years back, I had followed it pretty closely, and I had followed the development of this game since it was announced pretty closely, and it had gone through some up and downs, and the developers have been pretty upfront about that. They had at one point in mind a bigger, more ambitious project, probably more of a full-fledged open world 90s crime thriller game. But with hardships and development problems and financial stuff, they had to apparently pare that down, and that's what this is. And on the one hand, the paring down in some ways is smart. How the game is structured, how the time loop thing works. But then on the flip side also, it still feels like kind of an undercooked and compromised product. Combat is kind of 50-50. Driving is stronger, and then the world itself is awesome, but in terms of story and mission variety, it really falls short. Not to mention the fact that it does have some weird bugs and glitches and NPC AI problems. That's the long story short of it, but I did want to at least highlight here, because on this channel, I like to talk more about stuff I actually like. The world itself is really damn good. It feels like a lot of time and energy was spent on building the world out itself. This Tindleston, it's like an East Coast shithole from the 90s, and I love that. It's a small map, and I don't necessarily always mind that, but with how the repetitive mission structure works here, it's kind of to its detriment. But I don't mind a small map when it's like this, because it's very handcrafted, and all locations and all areas feel really detailed and really unique. Every block is different. There's always something different going on. And to me, it just feels like such a good job, a great representation of so many East Coast cities that I know pretty damn well, from, of course, New York, but not really New York, specifically more like Queens, a lot of Queens, some of Brooklyn, and a little bit of the Bronx here and there. Then you got aspects of it that are a little bit like Philadelphia, and then a little bit of Boston, kind of like some of the waterfront areas of Boston, and some Detroit as well. It just feels like a really good combination. And especially I could speak to the New York side, some of the ways it feels like certain areas is just incredibly impressive. You have almost like the BQE and the church right off the exit. You have the steps in the Bronx, the Joker steps. Then you have a lot of under the bridge stuff that feels very Brooklyn, Queens. You have areas that feel like Astoria, some areas that feel like Long Island City, like how it used to be before it became what it is today. And to me, it does kind of give me that same feeling of GTA 4, where GTA 4, obviously Liberty City was fictional, but it was heavily modeled off of New York. But not only New York, but a very specific time period in New York. And I think Samson does that really well here, with it being kind of like a 90s grimy thing. It just feels like a great combination of all these cities: New York, Philly, Boston, Detroit. Some can argue areas of Chicago as well, but I love it to death. From the building styles to the bridge styles to the fact that, like, in terms of a playground, it's pretty good. You got some straightaways, you got some tight streets, you have a lot of kind of like off-road, muddy backwater streets here and there that kind of remind me of like a perfect construction of like areas that are just designed for car chases. I like that stuff. Plus, there's good world building in terms of like just the grime itself, the graffiti. There's this like drug that is infected. It's kind of like fentanyl, but like it's a fake thing infecting the citizens. You see it on the streets. You see it with the people, and it's just really interesting. Like they really put the time and effort in here. When it comes to punching guys, which is a lot of the game, that's where it kind of falls short. I think combat is all right, and I think in moments when it all really is working, it can feel somewhat satisfying to knock a dude out in one hit. But the enemy AI is pretty goofy. Sometimes they'll get stuck. Sometimes they'll stand there and not react. And after a while, the combat gets a little repetitive and spammy. There's not enough variety throughout the course of the game to really keep you super hooked. But moment to moment, every once in a while, you knock a guy out, you throw a guy off a roof, it works. Oh, also, Jesper Kid does the music. Jesper Kid is like one of my personal goats in terms of video game composition. He's done the music for so many things, from some of the classic Splinter Cell games to Assassin's Creed 2 to Freedom Fighters to all the early Hitman games, with Hitman 2, Silent Assassin, for me being some of my personal favorite video game music. The guy has always killed it. And his music here is good. It's low key. It's pretty chill. It's very like ambient stuff, but it's really good. The driving is much better. I like driving quite a bit. It feels good. It's not perfect. Like, you know, every game, open world driving game, you know, there are sticking points, but here it's pretty decent. Drifting around a corner is awesome. Every car has like nitrous for no reason. The car detail is interesting because it's all like shitty 90s sedans, which I like. But his car specifically is basically the magnum opus from Mad Max. They actually, I believe, referenced it. They've called it the magnum opus here. And it's awesome. There's a temporary downshift button, which I appreciate. Like, that just feels like such a good nod to car chases. I know I said that in the before you buy as well, but like, I love shit like that. Being able to park and hide and turn off your engine and cut the lights to hide from cops, that works. But that's when it's good. When it's not good is when you can kind of, a lot of the times, just nitrous and drive in a straight line across a bridge and then just immediately lose the chase. Or the fact that like the game has weird collision stuff once in a while. Well, you'll hit something that seems really small and it'll dead stop you, and it just kills all momentum, and it can make some car combat sequences and chases a little more awkward and fiddly than they need to be. Not to mention the fact that like sometimes you'll crash through gates, they'll pop wide open, and then every once in a while you'll drive through a gate that you had seemingly crashed through before, but it like gets all borked and you get stuck. So the game has a lot of weird glitches and bugs like that, from stuff like that to enemies getting stuck in environments, me having to seek out in the environment enemies that should have been coming to me to fight me. Stuff like that really holds it back. And then the loop itself, the game loop, is an interesting experiment where you have a limited number of action points in a day. These are the amount of these are limited points that you can spend on certain missions to get money. Each mission is a different difficulty, different amount of money earned, and at the end of the day, you need to make sure you spent your points wisely to have generated enough money to pay off a payment of your debt, because the entire game is this looming debt number of 100 grand that you need to slowly chip away at. I like it in theory, but ultimately it kind of resulted in you doing, other than like the story missions, all the missions that you need to generate money and move the game along are pretty repetitive. After a handful of hours, I had kind of seen everything. Because the world is small and the enemy pool is small, you're kind of just doing the same shit over and over again. And that really bummed me out, and that kind of hurt the experience. On the positive side of that, it's just this endless car chase fist fight simulator. If you want that for a couple hours and you don't want to think about it, that's all right. But I was hoping for a little bit more because like I need something to bring me along. There's a good skill tree at the very least, and I like the world, but like, you know, some of the combat stuff didn't really do it for me. The story wasn't stringing me along because the story is not really much. Everybody in the game world is miserable and it's a grimy world. And I like that from a noir standpoint, but like you're also grinding this money to bail out your sister, and your sister consistently calls you every day. You get to pick up the phone and she just talks about how everything sucks and she just sucks. So it's like, I'm not even motivated to help her out either. Not too much characterization with like Samson himself and stuff like that. And that's unfortunate. Also, some really crazy accents. Samson has this weird kind of like fake forced New York accent that like some people only some people can pick up on, but that's fine. That's charming because it is very like it's clearly trying to emulate some grimy crime movies, you know? And I respect them for doing that. I respect the game being like $25, but I think it just needed more time in the oven. I think it needed a little bit more compelling writing to keep me interested, but I think it just really needed more in terms of quest design and cleaning up and tightening combat. Both car combat, which is a little okay here and there, but the fist combat, hand-to-hand combat. You know what I mean? So for a lot of people, you're going to hear this and you're going to be like, nah, not for me. I know some people, if you're like me and you like these types of games, you can't help but be curious. I would say still maybe check it out. Maybe after it gets some patches and bug fixes as well. I think some of it is fundamental. I don't think they can completely change the game and make it better, but I think with some bug fixes and little tweaks here and there, it could feel better. So yeah, it's complicated. It is definitely not like I recommend it. It's definitely, you know, it's not a disaster, but I was hoping to get a little more from it. But I'm hoping that this studio can continue to do stuff like this because at the very least, they built an awesome little world. This little open game world is really cool to look at, but visuals and art direction are only one part of the package, and the rest of it needed a little work for me. The other bit of news I wanted to talk about in the gaming world this week is real quick, but this is from IGN. Former Nintendo veteran says Link finally speaking in the Legend of Zelda movie risks ruining the series' magic. So this actually comes from a tweet from Takaya Imamura, who is the art director on Majora's Mask, but he's also had his hands on a lot of different Nintendo projects throughout the years. He also directed Steel Diver on 3DS, so you know, don't disrespect. But you know, he's had his hand like all the projects, from special thanks to consulting to character design, from like the Star Fox games, Bayonetta 2, Smash Bros. Like he's been around, and his quote is interesting. The moment Link speaks, he's saying in the movie, I can't help but worry a little of that the Zelda magic everyone has been nurturing in their hearts might just vanish into thin air. And I think that's an interesting talking point. Not just like an excuse to shit on the Zelda movie that is upcoming, but I do think it kind of taps into the one thing that kind of worried me about this movie is there's something with certain games, certain comic books, certain books, when they're adapted, it can be like almost like a kind of whiplash when you see it on screen because it's not exactly like what you expected. Now, when they revealed the looks at the characters for Zelda and Link, looked all right. But once they're plopped into a movie and movie things are happening, I don't know. It's gonna be weird. Again, like kind of what he insists is like people all kind of have their own little Zelda magic, their own idea of Zelda and Link and everything that they've been nurturing in their head for decades now. And I think that's tough to really reckon with when all of a sudden you see those characters represented on screen, seemingly faithfully with cool costumes and a budget, but they're speaking or they're just doing shit that you wouldn't expect. Sometimes that can go great, sometimes that can not. And with Link, I think I would actually rather him not speak in a movie. And I know that sounds crazy, but yeah, I would prefer that. I just think that, you know, in a regular old big mainstream production movie, they can't do something like that. They have to have these characters speak. But, you know, maybe I'm like annoying or insufferable, but if they could do the less is more approach, kind of a little bit more of like an artistic approach where Link doesn't say much, or look, I get he might have to speak, but if he says very little, and just when he does speak, it's important or it's just enough to move things along, I'd be okay with that. But Link having a full-blown conversation with somebody is something I can't even imagine, because it's like just not a component of Zelda. Look, I know there's been things where he's like spoken before, you can argue like through text or whatever, but like it's not there. Still, I'm really curious to see what this movie is. I'm hoping that they kind of try a very different approach than they do with the Mario movies, where it's this like massive bubblegum illumination minion style appeal. Zelda, they're still going to do something, right, to get it in front of as many eyeballs as possible. But I don't know. I'm just hoping that it's treated with a little bit more tact and care and reverence. I mean, the fact that they're shooting in New Zealand, like they're shooting where they shot Lord of the Rings, that's a good sign. Like shooting outside, not on a green screen in the volume. All right, cool. But I just thought it was interesting. Like I haven't seen like somebody like that mention or really tap into what I was feeling about this movie. And I think Imamura really kind of nails it at where I'm hopeful that maybe Link doesn't speak a lot. If he has to speak, hopefully it's minimal, but ultimately I'd prefer for him not to speak so that some of that Zelda magic can really be maintained. There is a world where they make a Link that speaks and it actually turns out to be incredible. But I think that's a really tall order. That's tough to nail. Like, how do you make everybody happy? I feel like it's an impossible task, but who knows? I don't envy the people working on this thing, but I'm really curious to see what it's gonna be. Hopefully it's not super corny and pandery, like where like there's a character in the movie who says, "Hey, listen," and then turns to the camera and holds for applause. Like, do you remember that? Like, hopefully nothing like that, but we'll see. There's still a lot of potential for a cool ass Zelda movie, so I'm hopeful. But that's all I wanted to yap about today. Between that and Samson, let me know what you're thinking about all the things I've yapped about. What do you think about Link speaking in a Legend of Zelda movie? But also Samson. Like I said, I've covered it on this channel before. I was curious about the ideas. Didn't quite come together for me, but maybe you've jumped in, maybe you have a different opinion, maybe you just watched a bunch of gameplay and you have strong feelings. Whoever you are, hit me up down in the comments. You can also find me on Instagram a lot. That's where I kind of lurk and just like post little stories and stuff. So thank you wherever you follow me. And if you listen to me yap, clicking the like button helps me. Thank you. I'm just talking about shit I love here. But that's all I got for you today. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games. Pizza's on me. See ya.